Thrown out into the storm, abandoned by the man she loved, Rieno's world shattered in a single night. Her husband and his cruel mother thought they'd destroyed her, but they had no idea a billionaire who once loved her was watching, waiting. Will she rise from the ashes, or will the past crush her forever? Stay with us, because what happens next will change everything. I'm so glad you're here with us today. Tell me, where are you watching from? I love seeing all your messages and knowing our stories reach every corner of the world. But now, get ready, because today's story will take you on a whirlwind of emotions, love, and suspense. Don't skip a second. The ending will touch your heart like never before. Rain screamed against the windows like an angry crowd outside a courtroom of fate. And inside that small suburban house, Rieno stood at the doorway, her trembling hands clutching a worn-out suitcase that carried the last traces of her dignity. The storm had no mercy tonight, and neither did the people who once promised to protect her. Sita's voice sliced through the thunder, sharp and cruel. "You barren woman, you brought nothing but shame to my family." Rieno's breath hitched. Her brown skin gleamed under the harsh flash of lightning, and her eyes filled with the same questions she'd carried for 2 long years. What did I do wrong? Why am I never enough? Jack, her husband, stood behind his mother, arms folded, his gaze colder than the rain outside. For 2 years, she had served him like a queen serves a cruel king, cooking his meals, washing his clothes, waiting for a smile that never came. The smell of wet earth mixed with Sita's anger as the older woman snatched Rieno's suitcase and threw it toward the porch. "Get out before I call the police!" she spat. Rieno's heart thudded so loud it drowned the thunder. She looked at Jack, the man she once called her whole world, and whispered, "Jack, please, tell her to stop." But Jack's silence hit harder than any insult. He didn't even blink. The gold wedding band on her finger suddenly felt heavier than chains, a reminder of vows that never meant anything. "I'm done living in a loveless marriage," he said at last, his tone flat, as if reading from a script rehearsed long ago. Rieno felt her knees weaken, the storm wind pulling at her hair, her breath uneven. Every dream she had built around him shattered in a single sentence. The sky roared as if heaven itself was protesting the injustice happening beneath it. Rieno stumbled onto the porch, her suitcase soaked instantly, her clothes clinging to her shivering body. Sita's laughter followed her like poison. "Maybe the rain will wash away your curse." The words burned into her heart, and she turned once more toward Jack, hoping, just once, he would change his mind. But he only closed the door, his face vanishing behind a wooden wall of indifference. The sound of the lock clicking echoed through the storm, final and cruel. Rieno's tears mixed with the rain, her lips trembling as she whispered to the wind, "Where will I go now?" She stepped into the street, each drop of rain feeling like shards of ice against her skin. The world blurred. The houses looked unfamiliar, cold, distant. Her slippers squelched in the mud, her feet numb. She thought of her parents, long gone, and the loneliness that awaited her. The street lamps flickered, casting brief moments of light that revealed the heartbreak etched across her face. Every flash of lightning illuminated her pain like a photograph meant to be remembered. Somewhere deep inside, she wanted to scream, to curse the sky, but all that came out was a whisper. "Why me, God?" Minutes turned to hours as she wandered through empty streets, drenched and trembling. Her suitcase handle broke, spilling her few belongings, a framed photo of her wedding day, her mother's scarf, and a single letter she once wrote to Jack but never gave him. A letter full of love he never deserved. The wind scattered the paper across the road, and she chased it weakly, her feet slipping. A car passed by without stopping, its headlights blinding her momentarily, and she fell to her knees. "Please, someone," she whispered, but her voice was drowned by the thunder. Inside her chest, her heart beat painfully, not from cold, but from rejection. Every breath she took hurt. Every tear she shed tasted of loss. She remembered the nights she stayed awake just to make sure Jack was comfortable, the mornings she prepared his coffee exactly the way he liked it, the smiles she faked to please Sita. All that love, all that patience, crushed beneath their cruelty. She looked up at the dark sky and said, "You took everything from me. What's left now?" The lightning flashed again, revealing her silhouette, a broken woman standing alone in a storm that mirrored her soul. Somewhere across the city, engines hummed against the rain-soaked asphalt. A black luxury car cut through the storm, its headlights slicing the darkness. Inside, Peterson Stark, a name whispered in business circles as one of the most powerful billionaires in the city, drove in silence. His phone rang. He ignored it. His mind was far away, on memories he never truly left behind. The storm reminded him of another night years ago when he had stood under the same kind of rain, watching a girl with brown skin and hopeful eyes wave goodbye to him as they parted after college. He had loved her then, Reno, but life had pulled them apart. As his windshield wipers fought the downpour, he spotted movement ahead. A faint figure stumbling along the roadside, soaked and shivering. At first, he thought it was just another traveler caught in the storm, but something about her frame, her familiar posture, made his chest tighten. "It can't be," he murmured. He slowed down, peering through the fog. The figure collapsed suddenly, crumpling to the ground like a wilted flower beaten by the rain. His instinct screamed and he slammed the brakes, the tires skidding on the wet road. For a second, time froze. The rain pounded on his car roof as he flung the door open and ran toward her. The closer he got, the more his heart raced. That face, those eyes. It was her. "Reno," he whispered, kneeling beside her. Her skin was ice cold, her lashes heavy with rain, her lips pale. He brushed her hair from her face, his own clothes getting soaked, and felt a rush of panic he hadn't known in years. "No, no, no! Don't you dare leave me again," he whispered fiercely. Reno's consciousness fluttered in and out. She heard a voice, distant yet achingly familiar. Her fingers twitched. She tried to open her eyes, but everything blurred. Only warmth surrounded her now, strong arms lifting her off the ground. She wanted to fight it, thinking it might be another dream, but the scent, clean, familiar, safe, pulled her in. Peterson carried her to his car, shielding her from the storm as best he could. Lightning cracked across the sky as he laid her in the back seat, wrapping his coat around her trembling body. He looked at her face, so changed, yet so the same, and his heart ached. "What happened to you, Reno?" he muttered, brushing his thumb against her cheek. She murmured something, but the sound vanished in the roar of thunder. The drive to his mansion felt endless. Every few seconds he glanced back to make sure she was still breathing. "Stay with me," he whispered repeatedly, gripping the wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. His thoughts raced. How did fate bring her back to me tonight? What did she suffer through? The storm outside seemed like a reflection of the chaos inside his chest. Back on the empty road, the puddles swallowed her footprints, as if the universe itself wanted to erase the pain she had walked through. Her old life was gone, washed away by the rain. Inside the car, as the lightning illuminated her face, Peterson gasped. He saw the faint scar on her wrist, the same scar she got years ago when he saved her from falling during college. His pulse quickened. "It really is you," he whispered. Reno stirred, whispering weakly, "Don't take me back there." He frowned, his heart breaking. "You'll never go back to that hell," he promised under his breath. The car's headlights briefly caught the silhouette of another car parked nearby, Jack's. Hidden in the shadows, Jack watched, confusion twisting his face. "Who's that man?" he muttered, jealousy already burning inside him. Peterson's mansion appeared through the mist like a fortress of light. He rushed inside, carrying Reno in his arms, his servants gasping in shock as their usually stoic boss shouted, "Get blankets! Call the doctor, now!" He laid her gently on the couch near the fireplace, his heart pounding as he felt her pulse faint but steady. The fire crackled, casting golden light across her face. For the first time in years, he saw her not as a memory, but as reality, fragile, beautiful, alive. Her lips parted, and she whispered one word. His name. Peterson. He froze. That single word carried the weight of lost years, broken promises and lingering love. His eyes glistened as he knelt beside her, whispering, "I'm here, Reno. I'm right here." As she drifted into unconsciousness, the thunder outside softened, almost as if the storm itself had bowed before the reunion it had witnessed. Peterson looked at her hand resting limply in his and whispered a vow only the fire could hear. "I lost you once. Never again." Outside, the rain finally began to ease, but in that moment, two hearts that had been torn apart by time were once again within reach. Destiny had rewritten its script in the middle of a storm. As Peterson lifted her gently into his arms, his voice trembling, he whispered, "Reno?" Her eyelids fluttered open, confusion and disbelief swirling in her gaze as she looked at the man she once loved. Lightning flashed behind them, sealing the moment forever. Two souls meeting again under the same rain that once separated them. The rain had stopped, but its scent still lingered in the air. That soft, cold fragrance of washed clean skies and second chances. Reno stirred beneath silk sheets that felt too smooth to belong to the world she had come from. Her eyelashes fluttered, her breath shaky, and for a moment she wondered if she had died and been reborn somewhere gentle. The ceiling above glowed with soft amber light, and the sound of a distant fireplace crackling warmed the silence. Then she heard it, a slow, familiar heartbeat close by, steady and strong. Her eyes opened fully, and there he was, Peterson, seated beside her bed, his gaze fixed on her face as if afraid to blink and lose her again. For a heartbeat, she froze. Was she dreaming? Her mind replayed the storm, the road, the headlights. It couldn't be real. "Peterson," she whispered, her voice faint, trembling. His expression softened instantly, relief washing through his features. "You're safe now," he said quietly, brushing a damp strand of hair from her forehead. "You were unconscious for hours." Reno blinked, confusion and fear swirling inside her chest. She looked around the grand bedroom, marble walls, golden drapes, everything shining with elegance, a world far removed from the cold street where she had last stood. Her fingers clutched the sheet. "Why am I here?" "How do you still know me?" she asked, her voice shaking. Peterson leaned forward, his tone low and raw. "Because I never stopped thinking about you." The words hung in the air like music she hadn't heard in years. Reno turned away, trying to hide the tears burning her eyes. "I don't deserve to be here," she murmured. "I was thrown out. I have nothing." Peterson's jaw tightened, emotion flickering behind his calm exterior. "You have you, Reno, and that's everything," he said, his voice breaking slightly. He handed her a glass of warm water. Their fingers brushed, and she flinched at the sudden warmth that spread through her. Memories flooded back. The university courtyard, the day he had confessed he liked her smile, the way she had laughed and said they could never be more because their worlds were too different. Yet here he was again, proving the universe wrong. She tried to speak, but emotion strangled her throat. "Why did you stop me back then?" she asked weakly. Peterson exhaled, eyes distant. "Because I was stupid enough to think time would wait for us." His voice cracked slightly as he added, "It didn't, and it cost me years of wondering who you married, whether you were happy. I never imagined finding you in the rain like that." Reno's chest tightened. She swallowed the lump in her throat. Happy, she repeated bitterly. I thought I was at first. But his love was hollow. Sita's cruelty filled the walls, and my silence became my survival. The words spilled out like a confession long buried. They said I was barren. They said I was a curse. Her tears fell fast now, soaking the pillow beneath her. Peterson's knuckles whitened as he clenched his fists, his heart breaking at every word. Don't say that, he whispered, leaning closer. You're not barren of love, Reno. You're full of it. You just gave it to the wrong people. His fingertips brushed away her tears, and for a heartbeat, the air shifted. Two souls standing on the edge of something deeper, yet fragile. Reno's voice trembled. Why would you help me now? Pity. Her tone cracked halfway through the word, but Peterson's answer came like thunder after silence. Pity. He shook his head slowly. No, Reno. This isn't pity. This is what love looks like when it never died. His voice carried a weight that made her heart skip. She searched his face, half afraid to believe him, half desperate to. The firelight danced across his eyes, revealing the truth she once adored. Sincerity, unguarded and raw. He reached out, took her trembling hand, and placed it over his chest. Feel that? He whispered. That's the same heartbeat that raced every time you walked past me years ago. Her fingers trembled over the steady rhythm beneath his shirt. She wanted to pull back, to guard herself from hope, but hope was already blooming inside her, despite the, she whispered, Peterson, what if I'm broken? His grip tightened around her hand. Then let me be the man who puts your pieces back together, he replied, his tone fierce and tender all at once. For a long moment, silence filled the room except for the whisper of rain still dripping from the roof. Reno's gaze wandered to the window where the city lights glimmered like scattered stars. Do you believe fate really gives second chances? She asked softly. He smiled faintly. No. I believe it gives unfinished hearts another chance to finish their story. The words wrapped around her heart like a promise she didn't know she needed. He stood and poured her some tea, the steam curling between them like a fragile thread. Drink this. You've been through too much tonight. She obeyed quietly, her hands still shaking. Each sip burned slightly, but it grounded her in the present. She wasn't in Sita's house anymore. She wasn't unwanted. She was safe, in the care of a man whose gaze held no judgment. As she lowered the cup, her eyes caught a framed photo on his desk, a younger Peterson smiling with a woman. Her heart skipped. Who's that? She asked. He looked at it and smiled softly. My mother. She used to say if love is true, it always finds its way home. Reno's breath hitched. Maybe that was what was happening right now. The weight of her exhaustion settled again. She sank back against the pillow. I should leave in the morning, she murmured, though her voice lacked conviction. Peterson frowned. And go where? Back to the people who broke you. She said nothing. Reno, he continued gently, you don't have to run anymore. Her eyes glistened. Then what do I do? She whispered, lost. He took a deep breath, stepping closer until his shadow fell softly across her face. You heal, he said, his tone barely above a whisper, and you let me help you. Their eyes met, and the air between them thickened with unspoken longing. Reno felt her heartbeat quicken. She looked away first, afraid of what it meant. Time stretched as they sat in silence, the storm outside fading into gentle drizzle. She stared at the ring still on her finger, the one symbol of pain she couldn't remove. Peterson noticed. Take it off, he said quietly. Her breath caught. It's over, he added, his gaze steady. Let it be. With trembling fingers, she slid the ring off and placed it on the nightstand. The small metallic sound echoed like a closing chapter. Peterson exhaled deeply, whispering almost to himself, Now we can start again. Reno stared at him, unsure whether to laugh or cry. Start again? She repeated. You talk like we can just erase everything. He smiled sadly. No, we don't erase. We rebuild. The simplicity of his words disarmed her. She searched his face, looking for deceit, but found none. He leaned back in the chair beside her, exhaustion finally showing in his posture. You should rest, he said softly. I'll be right here. You don't have to, she murmured. I want to, he answered, and something inside her broke. The kind of break that sets you free. As she began to drift into sleep again, she felt his hand brush against hers, hesitant, protective, almost afraid. And yet, it felt like coming home. Hours passed. Dawn began to stretch its golden fingers through the curtains. Reno stirred again, her mind heavy with half-dreams, laughter from college days, stolen glances in hallways, the bittersweet goodbye under the rain years ago. When she opened her eyes, Peterson was still there, his head resting against the couch, asleep, sitting upright. She studied him quietly, the way his jaw softened in sleep, the faint lines that time had etched around his eyes. He looked older, wiser, still impossibly kind. Her heart whispered something dangerous. What if this time he's meant to stay? He woke to find her watching him. You're staring, he teased gently, his voice hoarse with sleep. She blushed, looking away. I was remembering, she admitted. A heart that still remembers, he said quietly, echoing her thought. It never forgets where it felt safe. Reno swallowed hard. You make it sound easy, he smiled. It's not. But it's worth it. He moved closer, his hand resting lightly on hers. Reno, you deserve to be loved the way you've always loved others, deeply, without conditions. She blinked rapidly, fighting back tears. He whispered, Let me show you how it feels to be cherished. Her lips parted, but no words came, just silence thick with emotion. A long pause lingered between them, filled with heartbeats instead of sentences. Then Peterson's voice dropped lower, sincere and steady. I know this sounds crazy, Reno. But losing you once taught me that tomorrow isn't promised. He leaned closer, eyes glistening. So if there's one thing I want tonight, it's to make sure you never wake up alone again. Her pulse raced. What are you saying? She asked, voice barely audible. He smiled, that same soft, determined smile from years ago, and took her hand gently in both of his. I'm saying, he whispered, that I still love you. I never stopped. Tears welled in her eyes, spilling freely down her cheeks. You can't mean that. After all this time, she said, trembling. But his gaze never wavered. Time doesn't kill real love, he replied. It just tests it. The world seemed to stop. Only the faint hum of rain outside remained. He looked at her with a mixture of fear and hope, then slowly knelt beside the bed, his fingers still entwined with hers. He took a deep breath, eyes locked on hers, and said the words that froze her heart and changed her fate forever. Marry me tonight. 3. The moment hung in the air like a trembling heartbeat, the sound of rain tapping against the wide glass windows as Reno stared at Peterson, unsure if she had truly heard what he said. Marry me tonight. Those words echoed through her chest, mingling with the faint rumble of thunder outside. Her breath caught, her lips parted in disbelief. You can't mean that, she whispered, voice fragile as glass. But Peterson didn't blink. His gaze was steady, burning through her doubt. I meant every word, Reno. You deserve to be loved tonight, not tomorrow, not after you've suffered enough. Tonight. For a moment, her soul wanted to believe him, but years of rejection had built a fortress of fear around her heart. She stepped back, trembling, her wet hair falling around her face. You don't understand, Peterson. I'm broken. His answer was a whisper against the thunder. Then let me be the one who holds your broken pieces together. The air thickened with emotion. He stood, walked to the window, and opened it. The cool rain rushed in, soaking his shirt as he turned to her, eyes glistening. "Come," he said softly. "Let the rain wash away everything they did to you." For a heartbeat, she hesitated, but then she stepped forward. The moment her feet touched the cold marble near the open window, a streak of lightning illuminated them both, like destiny itself approving their union. Peterson reached out, his hand warm against her trembling fingers. "Do you trust me, Reno?" he asked. Her lips quivered. "I want to," she breathed. "Then trust this moment," he said, his voice low and sure. Within the hour, his private garden was transformed into something out of a dream. The scent of fresh roses mingled with rain and candlelight, each flame flickering like tiny hearts beating around them. Reno stood there in a simple white dress. Nothing extravagant, just pure and soft, like her spirit. Peterson had chosen it himself, saying she deserved to look like the angel she was. As she stepped into the garden, she froze for a moment. The entire place shimmered under the rain, hundreds of candles protected under glass domes, and a small arch of white lilies stood before them. "Peterson," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. "You did all this for me?" He smiled gently, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "No," he said softly. "I did this for us." Her heart skipped a beat, her mind whispering, "Can love really begin again after ruin?" He took her hand, guiding her toward the archway. "Do you know why I wanted rain tonight?" he asked quietly. She shook her head, raindrops gliding down her cheeks like silver tears. "Because," he said, "when it rained the night I lost you years ago, I swore that if I ever found you again, I'd rewrite that memory with love." His words hit her like thunder in her soul. Reno's lips trembled as her heart began to melt, piece by piece. "Peterson," she whispered. He leaned closer. "No more tears. No more begging for love that hurts. From tonight, every tear that falls will be mine to kiss away." The officiant stood silently nearby, a close friend of Peterson's, ready to bless their union. As they faced each other, the candles flickered wildly under the breeze, the rain surrounding them like music. Peterson's deep voice carried through the storm. "Reno, you've known pain, betrayal, and loneliness, but I've known the emptiness of living without you. You are my peace, my reason, my redemption. Will you marry me, not out of pity, not out of need, but because your heart still remembers mine?" Her hands shook as she wiped a tear. "I don't have anything to give you, Peterson. Not wealth, not pride. I'm just—" He interrupted softly. "You have yourself, and that's all I ever wanted." The way he said it made her soul tremble. In that moment the world faded. There were no cruel words, no past, no shame, just them. For a heartbeat, her fear whispered, "What if this is a dream that disappears when dawn comes?" But when Peterson slid the simple silver ring onto her finger, warmth bloomed through her chest. It wasn't diamonds that made it shine, it was the way he looked at her, as if she was the rarest jewel he had ever seen. As they exchanged vows, lightning danced across the sky, and their words mingled with the rhythm of rain. "I promise," he whispered, "that you will never stand outside in the storm alone again." She replied, voice breaking, "And I promise I'll never let fear steal this moment." Their lips met under the archway, rain falling around them like blessings. The kiss wasn't rushed. It was the kind that stitched wounds, that breathed life into broken hearts. He lifted her in his arms, her wet dress clinging to him, and for the first time, Reno laughed through her tears. "You're soaked," she murmured. He smiled. "Then I guess we're both baptized by the same storm." He carried her through the garden, past the candles and the roses, into the mansion that now felt like a sanctuary. As he set her down, her eyes caught the firelight flickering in his gaze. It wasn't lust, it was devotion, something deeper that made her heart ache with wonder. Inside, he dried her hair with a towel, his fingers tender against her skin. "You're safe now," he said softly. But when he kissed her forehead, her walls finally broke. She clung to him, whispering, "I was so tired of pretending to be strong." His answer was a whisper against her ear, "Then let me be your strength." That night, he didn't love her like a man who owned her. He loved her like a man who had waited his whole life to find her again. Each kiss, each breath, was a promise reborn. Outside, the rain didn't stop. It fell harder. But this time it was no longer punishment. It was rebirth. Between every heartbeat, Reno felt her past wash away. The loneliness, the insults, the humiliation, all fading into the rhythm of his heartbeat against hers. The warmth of his chest, the whisper of his name from her lips. It was like poetry written in thunder. Her eyes fluttered open in the middle of the night, wondering, will this love still be here when morning comes? As dawn slowly crept through the curtains, golden light fell over their entwined hands. Peterson stirred beside her, his arm still around her waist. She turned to look at him, the peace on his face making her chest tighten. For the first time, she wasn't scared of tomorrow. She was home. Then he whispered, still half asleep, "Reno." She smiled faintly. He opened his eyes, his voice a murmur against her skin. "I have something to show you, something that will make your past kneel before you." The words froze her breath, the sunlight glinting off the ring on her finger, a reminder that love had found her again, but fate wasn't done yet. What was Peterson planning? What could possibly make the ghosts of her past bow before her new beginning? The answer waited just beyond the next sunrise. Peterson's words lingered in Reno's mind as they stepped into the grand hall of Starline Enterprises weeks later, her hand still entwined in his. The building shimmered in the morning sunlight, glass walls reflecting the city's heartbeat, and yet for Reno, it was more than a building. It was a monument to everything she had survived, everything she had reclaimed. She inhaled deeply, the scent of polished wood and faint hints of new leather filling her lungs, mingling with the subtle perfume of lilies Peterson had insisted on placing in every corner. Her heart raced with anticipation and a little unease, knowing that this was a day that would change everything. She had walked through storms, endured humiliation, and been thrown out of a home that never loved her. But today, she was walking into power. Her brown skin glowed under the soft morning light that streamed through the massive windows, her tailored suit hugging her figure in a way that spoke of authority without arrogance. Every step echoed against the polished marble floors like a declaration, each click of her heels a punctuation in a story of resilience. Employees paused mid-conversation, whispers rippling through the hall as their eyes followed her every movement. "Is that Reno?" one murmur carried, astonishment and disbelief intertwining in the tone. She didn't falter, her spine straight, her gaze calm and commanding. Every glance toward her office chair reminded her of the countless nights she had dreamed of this moment while enduring the cold indifference of Jack and the cruelty of Sita. In the corner of her mind, a flicker of fear stirred. Will they accept me now, or will the ghosts of my past haunt me even here? Peterson walked beside her, a subtle strength anchoring her presence. The two of them entered her new office, the leather chair at the head of the boardroom gleaming as if welcoming its rightful owner. On the walls, the names of her predecessors felt like distant echoes compared to the prominence her own name now held on the polished brass plaque. Reno Stark Peterson, Chief Executive Officer. She swallowed, her pulse quickening at the weight of the moment. She remembered Jack's mocking laughter, his eyes rolling at her ambitions, and Sita's sneering voice. All of that had led her here, yet she felt no triumph in revenge, only satisfaction in the quiet dignity of achievement. The doors opened once more, and Jack walked in. Time seemed to stretch in the silence that followed. His eyes widened as they fell on the woman seated confidently at the head of the table, the chair he had once belittled her for dreaming of now perfectly suited for her presence. His jaw dropped, disbelief and shame mingling across his face. "Reno," he stammered, voice catching as if swallowed by the room itself. She lifted her eyes calmly, meeting his gaze with no trace of the nervous, pleading woman she had once been. "Good to see you, Mr. Jack," she said softly, her words measured, deliberate, and just enough to cut him with authority. "Please submit your performance report by noon." The room seemed to hold its breath. Every eye was on him, the man who had once held power over her life, now reduced to just another employee under the very woman he had discarded. Jack's face went pale, his lips twitching as he opened his mouth, unsure if he should apologize, explain, or simply run. The employees whispered again, a wave of astonishment rolling over them like a tide. Reno's calm smile was like steel wrapped in silk, graceful, unyielding, impossible to ignore. Her presence alone was rewriting the hierarchy, shifting the balance of power with nothing more than a glance. She was no longer the woman who trembled in the storm. She was the one who commanded storms themselves. Jack's mind raced. How did she rise so high? How did I lose everything while she gained everything I ever mocked? Peterson entered the room, just as Jack turned to leave, placing a protective, possessive arm around Reno's waist. Her head lifted slightly, leaning into the warmth of his presence. And Jack froze. The man who had always been a figure of strength, a pillar of her past oppression, now stood as an extension of her power. Every muscle in Jack's body stiffened, his face draining of color as he realized the scale of his defeat. Peterson's eyes locked onto him, not with rage, but with unyielding authority, silently warning that Reno was untouchable. In that moment, Reno felt a surge of vindication, not cruel, not spiteful, but the pure, satisfying weight of destiny settling into place. Employees turned to Peterson, whispering under their breaths, astonished by his presence and the way he seemed to belong at her side as much as she did at the head of the boardroom. Reno straightened in her chair, feeling every pair of eyes on her, every judgment or doubt melting into awe. Her hands rested lightly on the table, her fingers tracing the edge with a quiet confidence that belied the storm she had endured. She was calm, composed, radiant in authority, the very definition of a woman transformed by trials, yet untouched by bitterness. From across the room, Jack's lips moved in a silent plea, a desperate attempt at regaining what he had lost, but his voice never emerged. He was frozen, powerless, and painfully aware of how far he had fallen while she had risen. Peterson's arm around her waist was subtle but commanding. He whispered something low and intimate, a private reassurance that no one else could hear. "This is yours, Reno. All of it. And they'll learn one by one that you were never less than them. They were just blind." She exhaled slowly, letting the warmth of his words and his presence settle her racing heart. Jack's expression shifted from shock to panic as he realized that not only was Reno empowered, but she had an ally whose loyalty and love were absolute, and who had the means to ensure her past tormentors could never harm her again. The employees in the room began murmuring more audibly now, some impressed, some in disbelief, all witnessing a transformation that was almost mythical. A junior manager approached, nervously, stammering, "Ms. Peterson, we didn't expect—" "Congratulations, ma'am." Reno nodded politely, her smile serene but commanding, the kind that could disarm fear or envy alike. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft yet resonant, carrying the weight of authority and dignity. "Now, let's focus on moving forward. Every one of you has a role to play in this company, and I expect excellence." As she spoke, Jack tried to respond, his pride battling his shame, but Peterson's icy glare stopped him mid-sentence, the unspoken message clear. She is mine. Step out of line, and there will be consequences. Peterson tightened his grip slightly around her waist, a gentle reminder of unity and strength, and Reno felt an intoxicating mixture of comfort and power. She realized that true authority wasn't just in titles or wealth. It was in being supported by someone who loved you fiercely, someone who would never let the world diminish your worth again. Jack's eyes darted nervously to the door, then back to her face. He knew he had no foothold, no leverage, no apology capable of undoing the rise of the woman he had discarded. Reno's gaze scanned the room, meeting the eyes of every employee. Some avoided hers, intimidated by the quiet strength emanating from her posture. Others looked at Peterson and then back at her, realizing that their CEO had not only been elevated by power, but had been chosen and cherished by a man who could have anyone, and had chosen her. The combination was irresistible and undeniable. As she seated herself fully in the leather chair, feeling the authority settle around her shoulders like a cloak, Jack's gaze fell to the brass nameplate. Reno Stark Peterson, CEO. He realized in that instant that the woman he had thrown out had not only survived, but she had conquered everything he had taken for granted. Peterson's hand remained on her waist, a silent shield, a protective anchor. Reno inhaled deeply, her brown skin radiant, her eyes steady and unyielding. "Let's begin the day," she said, her voice firm yet graceful. Her presence alone shifted the energy in the room. The man who had once commanded her life now stood reduced to witnessing her ascent, powerless to intervene. Mini cliffhanger. And as the first meeting commenced, Reno glanced at Peterson, who gave her a subtle nod and a faint smile, reminding her that no matter the challenge, no one could ever touch the power they had now, together. The sound of her voice, steady and unshakable, carried through the hall as she outlined the first agenda. A sweeping reorganization, new initiatives, and an unmistakable declaration. She was here to lead, to protect, and to rise above the past. Every word, every pause, every glance at Peterson reinforced the truth that she was no longer the timid woman who had cried in the rain. She was a force, a queen in her own right, and a partner whose love had become her strongest weapon. Jack's face remained pale, a silent storm of regret and disbelief brewing behind his eyes. He realized fully now that the seat of power had shifted forever, and he had no idea how to reclaim even a fraction of what he had lost. Peterson whispered in her ear, soft enough for only her to hear, "They will remember your name, Reno, and those who doubted you will bow before the life you've built." Reno exhaled, feeling the weight of every insult, every cruel word, every night spent in fear, dissolve into a sense of triumph she had never imagined. As the meeting concluded, Jack hesitated at the door, hand trembling on the handle, looking back at the woman he once owned, and finally understanding that he was not only powerless but utterly irrelevant in her world now. Reno leaned back, the chair supporting her like a throne, Peterson's arm still securely around her. She let herself smile, a slow, quiet, victorious smile, the kind that comes from surviving storms, reclaiming life, and discovering love that never falters. For the first time in years, she felt whole, untouchable, and free. But even as the city lights glimmered through the windows and her name blazed across the boardroom walls, a soft knock echoed at the door, and she realized that her past might not yet have finished testing her resolve. The morning sunlight streamed through the wide windows of Starline Enterprises, yet inside the office, a storm was about to erupt, one far louder than any Reno had endured in the rain outside Jack's house. Just as she and Peterson were reviewing the latest company projections, the doors burst open with a violent slam. Sita, red-faced and shaking with fury, stormed into the boardroom, her stilettos clicking sharply against the polished marble floors. Her voice, high and shrill, cut through the calm like glass breaking. "How dare you humiliate my son like this?" The board members froze mid-sentence, whispering to each other, their astonishment thick in the air. Reno, seated with quiet authority, lifted her eyes and met Sita's gaze without flinching. There was no fear, no hesitation, only the serene power of someone who had survived hell and walked out stronger. Sita's glare landed on Reno like a dagger, and for a heartbeat, the office held its collective breath, wondering if the storm of humiliation would strike back. Reno's voice was calm, deliberate, carrying the weight of dignity and truth. "I didn't destroy your son. He destroyed himself," she replied, her tone steady, measured, the kind that silenced arrogance instantly. Every word was precise, every pause deliberate. Peterson stood silently beside her, a protective pillar of strength. His presence alone was enough to make Sita hesitate, yet her pride and fury refused to yield. "You took everything from him," Sita cried, her words trembling with anger, panic and disbelief, as if reality itself was betraying her. Reno's calm smile widened slightly, almost imperceptibly, like a queen who had finally watched the pieces fall into place. "You see," Reno continued softly, her words flowing like a gentle stream over sharp stones, "I didn't take from him. I simply earned what I deserved." There was no malice in her voice, only truth. And that truth cut deeper than any scream, more powerfully than any rage Sita could summon. Around them, the board members exchanged glances, awe slowly replacing shock. Whispers rippled like soft wind across the room. "She is unshakable. She is untouchable." Sita's face twisted in disbelief. How could the woman she had mocked, insulted and scorned remain so composed, so untouchable? Security stepped forward quietly, as if sensing the tension could explode at any moment. Without further confrontation, they escorted Sita toward the door, each step a reminder that she no longer held control, that her threats and venom had no place in Reno's world. As the door closed behind her with a decisive click, the silence in the room was heavy, filled with the echo of what had just transpired. Peterson's arm brushed lightly against Reno's, a subtle gesture of pride and protection. He leaned toward her and whispered softly, "You handled that like a true CEO." Reno's pulse quickened, not with fear or anxiety, but with the delicate anticipation of what she was about to reveal to the man who had been her anchor through every storm. That evening, the mansion was quiet, the soft glow of lamps casting golden reflections across the polished floors. Reno moved slowly through the corridors, her mind still swirling with the events of the day. She felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration, of vindication and relief. Peterson awaited her in the bedroom, the familiar warmth of his presence making her chest ache with longing. She climbed into the bed beside him, their hands intertwining, the familiarity of his touch grounding her like a lifeline. A nervous flutter stirred in her stomach, a secret trembling on the edge of her lips, waiting for the courage to emerge. Peterson turned his head, his gaze locking onto hers. "You were magnificent today," he murmured, his voice thick with pride and unspoken emotions. "No one could have handled Sita the way you did." She smiled faintly, resting her head against his chest, feeling the steady thrum of his heartbeat beneath her cheek. "It wasn't just today," she whispered, a quiver in her voice revealing the depth of her own vulnerability. "It's been every day of my life I've waited for this moment, for someone to finally see me, all of me." As she spoke, a sudden wave of dizziness swept over her. She clutched her stomach, the room tilting slightly, and Peterson's eyes widened with concern. "What's wrong?" he asked immediately, lifting her gently into his arms. Her voice trembled as she admitted softly, "I've been feeling dizzy, emotional, and sometimes nauseous." Peterson froze, his protective instincts flaring. He held her closer, his mind racing. Could it be? The thought lingered, electric, dangerous, and filled with hope all at once. Reno pressed her forehead against his chest, a mixture of excitement and fear swirling within her. I don't know. Peterson. But something feels different. By morning, the sunlight had turned golden over the mansion, streaming through the sheer curtains of the bedroom. Peterson moved quietly, careful not to disturb Reno, holding a small envelope in his hand. The test results from the previous night. His heart thudded so loudly it threatened to betray him before she even saw the evidence. He approached her, kneeling softly by the side of the bed, holding her hand gently, afraid to speak lest his emotions overwhelm him. Reno looked at him curiously, noticing the faint trembling in his jaw, the way his eyes glimmered with unspoken hope. Something told her that today would change everything. Peterson opened the envelope slowly, almost reverently, and held the results toward her. His voice trembled with a mixture of joy, disbelief, and awe. Reno, you're pregnant. The words seemed to hang in the air, powerful, magical, unbreakable. Reno's eyes widened, her mouth opening to speak, but no sound emerging. Tears sprang to her eyes, hot and fast, her chest tightening with happiness, fear, and wonder. For a heartbeat, she simply stared at him, unable to comprehend the miracle that had chosen her, the tiny life that now grew within her, a symbol of hope, love, and destiny. Peterson drew her into a tight embrace, lifting her from the bed slightly so that their bodies pressed together. This is our miracle, he whispered against her ear, his lips brushing her hair softly. I've waited for years to love you properly, and now our love will create life itself. Reno rested her head against his chest, letting the tears flow freely for the first time in years, the storm inside her dissolving in the warmth of his arms. The room seemed to glow brighter, the sunbeams reflecting off their entwined hands, and for a fleeting moment, the world outside ceased to exist. Yet deep in her mind, a question whispered, what challenges will this new life bring? Will the world allow this happiness to continue? Reno laughed softly, a sound of pure release, wiping away tears, feeling the rhythmic beat of Peterson's heart as if it synced perfectly with her own. I can't believe we're having a child, she said breathlessly. Peterson kissed her forehead, holding her closer. Believe it, my love, he whispered. This is only the beginning. And nothing, no one, will take away what we've just gained. As they held each other, a subtle sound came from outside the room, a hint of someone watching, of a life that once tormented Reno stirring in the shadows, unseen yet undeniable. Their happiness was bright, but the past, as always, was not finished. The evening passed slowly, filled with quiet conversations, laughter, and soft touches. Reno rested in Peterson's arms, feeling every life-changing, miraculous, terrifying, and beautiful emotion swirl inside her. This pregnancy was more than a test of fertility. It was proof that love, patience, and resilience had been rewarded, and that even the darkest storms could birth the brightest dawns. Yet, as the night deepened and Reno drifted into a calm sleep, Peterson sat awake, staring at her, a protective fury rising in his chest. Somewhere out there he knew forces might still challenge their happiness, and he silently vowed, no one will ever hurt her again, not while I live. By the first light of morning, when the sun painted the sky with strokes of gold and pink, Reno awoke to the sound of Peterson quietly placing the test results on her nightstand, a gentle reminder of the miracle growing inside her. She reached for him, intertwining her fingers with his, and whispered, "We did it, truly." Peterson's eyes shimmered with tears and love. "Yes, my Reno, we did it. And this time, nothing can stop us." But even as their hearts soared with the joy of new life, a subtle shadow lingered outside their window, a reminder that destiny's challenges were never finished, and that the true test of love and power was yet to come. The soft morning light streamed through the tall windows of the stark Peterson mansion, casting a golden glow on the room where Reno lay in Peterson's arms. Her body still trembled from the tears of joy and relief that had flowed freely the previous night, tears born not from sorrow, but from the overwhelming truth of a miracle she had almost given up hope on. For years, whispers of inadequacy, rumors of infertility, and the cruel words of Jack and Sita had haunted her. She had been told she couldn't conceive, that her womb held nothing but disappointment. Yet here she was, cradled in the arms of a man who loved her without measure, her body harboring life itself. Peterson held her gently, his hand resting protectively on her belly, as if he could shield the tiny life within from every danger in the world. Reno's eyes glistened with wonder as she whispered, I can't believe it. After everything, it's really happening." Peterson smiled softly, brushing a stray curl from her forehead, his lips hovering just above her temple. "It is happening, Reno. And it's the beginning of everything we've ever dreamed of." Peterson had become her constant support, a fortress of love and stability. Each morning he prepared breakfast in bed, the scent of fresh pastries, coffee, and tropical fruit filling the room as he carefully placed the tray beside her. Reno watched him with admiration, her heart swelling as he tenderly brushed her hair away from her face, kissed her gently on the cheek, and whispered soft reassurances. "You're perfect, Reno," he murmured, eyes full of devotion. "And so is our family." Her laughter, warm and melodic, filled the mansion, cascading through its halls like sunlight breaking through a storm-clouded sky. As her hand instinctively rested on her growing belly, Reno felt the tiniest flutter, a movement so delicate yet so profound that it brought tears to her eyes. "Peterson, did you feel that?" she asked, voice trembling with awe. "Yes," he whispered, pressing his ear against her stomach. "That's our miracle moving, already letting us know it's here." He tightened his embrace around her, his protective nature flaring. "I'll shield you both from everything. No one, absolutely no one, will ever hurt you." Life within the mansion had changed in ways Reno never anticipated. Nights were spent talking about names, imagining little hands and tiny feet, planning rooms filled with laughter, toys, and love. Peterson's devotion was unending. He would sit by her side for hours, reading stories, massaging her shoulders, or simply holding her while she rested. The intimacy between them deepened with each passing day, their love no longer just romantic, but also a shared reverence for the life growing between them. One evening, while watching the sunset from the terrace, Reno felt another flutter in her belly, stronger this time, and a shiver ran down her spine. "They're awake," she whispered, and Peterson leaned closer, his lips brushing her ear. "And they already know how loved they are." Yet while happiness blossomed within the mansion walls, the outside world remained indifferent, even cruel. Jack, unable to accept the reversal of his fortunes, had sunk deeper into despair and self-destruction. He drank heavily, his nights filled with regret, jealousy, and uncontrollable anger. Each passing day reminded him of what he had lost. Not only Reno, the woman he had spurned, but also the life he could never reclaim. His friends tried to console him, but their words fell on deaf ears. His nights ended in solitude, staring at the ceiling, haunted by memories of the woman who had risen above his scorn. One fateful night, driven by desperation and a longing to undo his mistakes, Jack appeared at the gates of the stark Peterson estate, his expression desperate and pleading. He was drenched in rain, his hair plastered to his forehead, as though the storm mirrored the turmoil within him. Reno, finishing her evening tea, heard the faint knock at the door and furrowed her brow. Something in her heart told her that this was him, the man who had caused her years of pain, standing once again before her. She approached cautiously, hand resting protectively over her stomach, her brown skin radiant even in the dim lighting of the hallway. "Jack?" she said, calm yet measured, her voice carrying both recognition and the distance that had grown between them. Jack's lips trembled as he tried to speak, his usual arrogance replaced with desperation. "Reno, I made a mistake. Please, forgive me." Reno met his gaze, her own eyes steady, unflinching. She saw the torment in him, the guilt that had aged him overnight, but she also recognized that forgiveness was not hers to give, not yet, not in the way he imagined. Her hand rested gently on her belly, the tiny life within anchoring her strength and resolve. She spoke softly but firmly. "You're too late, Jack." Behind her, a shadow stirred. Peterson stepped into the hallway without a sound, his eyes burning with protective fire, his jaw tight, his presence an unspoken warning that Jack had crossed a line that would never be forgiven. Jack's face went pale as he realized the magnitude of his situation. He had come to plead, to manipulate, perhaps to win back a life he had thrown away. Instead, he was confronted by the unshakable strength of the woman he had underestimated, and the unwavering, fierce love of the man who had always truly belonged by her side. Peterson's voice cut through the tension like steel, low and dangerous. "You will not touch her. Not her, not our children. Leave now before you regret every second you were foolish enough to return." Reno felt a sense of calm wash over her as Jack staggered backward, his words caught in his throat. She no longer trembled before threats or past pain. Her life had transformed completely. She was no longer a victim of circumstance, but a queen of her destiny, with a protector, a partner, and a family that no one could challenge. Jack's eyes darted to her belly, realizing fully that the life growing inside her was proof that he could never reclaim her love or undo the choices that had led her to this moment. Peterson moved closer to Reno, wrapping an arm firmly around her shoulders, the other resting protectively on her abdomen. "They are ours," he said, voice low, resolute and unwavering. "Everything you once lost, everything you feared, it's ours now. And I will fight for them, for you, until my last breath." Reno's tears fell freely, a mixture of relief, joy and awe at the miracle that had unfolded. She leaned into him, her laughter soft, yet filled with uncontainable emotion. "Our twins. They will know a love we never had." The mansion echoed with the sound of their laughter and whispered promises, a cocoon of warmth, love and anticipation for the new life that would soon fill their home. Outside, the storm of Jack's regret raged on, but inside, Reno and Peterson built a world untouchable by envy, cruelty, or malice. And yet, as they looked out over the city from the mansion's balcony, Reno felt a subtle shiver, a whisper of foreboding, reminding her that life's miracles often arrived accompanied by trials, yet unseen. Peterson kissed her temple, resting his forehead against hers, his heartbeat steadying her own. "Whatever comes," he murmured, "we will face it together. No one will ever take our happiness away." Reno nodded, eyes shining with conviction, the tiny movements in her belly affirming their promise, their miracle, and the unbreakable bond that had been forged through storms, loss, and love. As the first signs of morning light painted the horizon in soft pink and gold, a distant shadow watched the mansion, silent, unseen. But the threat was real. Someone from the past still lingered, and their arrival would test Reno, Peterson, and the new life within her in ways they could not yet imagine. The sun was just beginning to set, casting long shadows across the mansion's pristine floors, when an unexpected knock at the door shattered the quiet serenity that had settled over Reno and Peterson's home. Reno, still basking in the calm after the day's laughter and tiny movements of her twins in her belly, felt a pang of unease. She instinctively placed a hand over her stomach, feeling the subtle flutters within, as if seeking reassurance. "Peterson. Someone's at the door," she murmured, her voice calm but alert. Peterson's eyes narrowed slightly, a storm of protective instinct rising within him. He moved silently, his presence commanding, and opened the door with a controlled precision that left no room for error. The moment the door swung open, Jack staggered into view, drenched in the golden glow of the fading sun, his eyes wild, his expression a mixture of desperation, regret, and disbelief. Peterson's jaw tightened instantly. He stepped forward, his body positioning itself between Reno and the man who had once thrown her out into the storm. "You hurt her once," Peterson said, his voice low, steady, but carrying the weight of unyielding authority. "Come near her again, and I'll ruin you completely." Every syllable was deliberate, each word heavy with the promise of consequences so severe they would leave no room for negotiation. Jack froze, as if struck by a bolt of lightning, his arrogance evaporating under the force of Peterson's gaze. Jack's voice broke, cracking with a mixture of sorrow, anger, and helplessness. "She was my wife," he spat, his desperation echoing through the grand hall. Peterson stepped closer, his eyes like steel, radiating both fury and resolve. "You threw her out." "Now she's my world," he said coldly, each word a hammer blow, each pause a warning. Reno's heart thumped in her chest, not from fear, but from the intensity of witnessing her past and present collide. She felt the familiar flutter of her unborn twins, as if they sensed the tension, the protective energy radiating from Peterson. The air crackled with anticipation. Jack, frozen in shock, realized that the woman he had discarded was no longer his to command, and the man guarding her was unlike anyone he had ever faced. Security officers, summoned silently by Peterson's subtle gesture, appeared from the shadows. With firm hands, they moved to guide Jack out of the mansion, their grip gentle yet unyielding. As they dragged him away, Jack's shoulders sagged, his face pale, but tears fell freely, rolling faster than the rain that had once soaked Reno on that fateful night. Karma, it seemed, had finally completed its circle. The realization struck him deeply. Reno had risen, and he had nothing left but regret. Reno watched in silence, a complex wave of emotions washing over her. Triumph, sorrow, residual pain, and the lingering ache of a love that had once been hers to give. After the door closed, the mansion returned to its quiet. Reno, trembling slightly, turned to Peterson, seeking solace. "Why does seeing him still hurt?" she asked softly, her voice carrying vulnerability, her brown skin glowing in the dimming light. Peterson cupped her face, his thumb brushing her cheek tenderly, and kissed her forehead with an intimacy born of shared storms and triumphs. "Because you once loved him," he whispered, his voice both soothing and firm, "and because you're human." The realization hit Reno with gentle force. Love didn't erase scars, it healed them slowly, layer by layer, with patience and trust, and she was ready to let that healing continue. That night, the mansion was filled with the soft hum of anticipation, the air heavy with the scent of lavender and candlelight. Reno nestled close to Peterson, their bodies intertwined, every heartbeat a symphony of comfort and safety. She realized with profound clarity that love was more than passion. It was protection, devotion, and the unshakable knowledge that someone would fight for you with every fiber of their being. Peterson's fingers traced gentle patterns on her belly, feeling the life within her, and whispered promises meant only for her ears. "I'll make every breath you take feel like heaven." The tiniest movement within her womb made Reno gasp softly, the realization that her twins were already responding to his touch, filling her with a wonder so profound it left her breathless. Months passed, each day a careful balance of joy, anticipation, and vigilance. Peterson's attention never wavered. He monitored her every step, ensured she ate well, slept peacefully, and laughed freely. Reno, in turn, felt herself growing stronger with each passing day, her confidence shining brighter than ever. The mansion echoed with laughter, with whispered conversations about future nurseries and the gentle thuds of tiny kicks that announced the presence of her children. Yet, as serene as their days were, the shadows of the past lingered just beyond the walls of the estate, subtle but persistent, reminding them that life's challenges were never fully absent. Then came the night that would change everything. Reno's contractions began subtly at first, a faint tightening that she initially dismissed. But soon the intensity grew, the sharp rhythmic pains signaling the imminence of labor. Peterson, ever attentive, was at her side instantly, his hands steadying her, his voice calm and commanding. "You're going to be fine, Reno," he said, each word deliberate, filled with love and unwavering confidence. "I'm right here. I'll never leave you." The drive to the hospital was tense, each turn of the wheels amplifying the rhythm of her contractions, each second a mixture of fear and anticipation. Inside the labor room, the medical team worked swiftly, guided by Peterson's calm instructions and Reno's courageous determination. The monitors beeped relentlessly, the tension thick enough to choke, and yet, through it all, Peterson never left her side. He held her hand, whispered encouragements, kissed her forehead, and reassured her with every touch. Their love was an anchor amidst the storm of pain and uncertainty. But then, the monitors suddenly began to scream, a high-pitched alarm that froze Peterson and the medical team alike. Doctors shouted over the chaos, "We're losing her heartbeat!" Reno's eyes widened in terror, her hand instinctively clutching Peterson's arm. The world seemed to tilt, the walls closing in, every heartbeat in, the room racing in unison with her own. Peterson's face drained of color for the briefest moment, but his resolve returned instantly. He leaned close, his forehead pressed against hers, his voice a steady force amid the panic. "Reno, stay with me. You are my world, and nothing will take you from me." Time slowed to a torturous crawl. Each second stretched endlessly as the medical team fought to stabilize her, Peterson's hands never leaving hers, the life inside her a fragile thread between hope and despair. Minutes felt like hours. Reno's breath came in ragged bursts, sweat glistening on her brow, her eyes fixed on Peterson's unwavering gaze. She could feel the warmth of his hand on her stomach, the steady pulse of reassurance. And in that fragile moment, the bond between them became more than love. It became survival, trust, and the unbreakable promise of protection. The doctor's voice finally broke through the haze of panic. "We're stabilizing her, but she needs to push, now." Peterson's hand squeezed hers, and he whispered, "I'm right here. Every step, every breath." Together, Reno, summoning every ounce of courage, focused on Peterson's presence, his words, the love they shared, and the tiny flutters of life that had persisted through every trial. She pushed, guided by his unwavering support, and the room filled with the raw, emotional power of birth, the pain, the hope, the miracle of life itself. As the first cries pierced the air, Peterson's eyes filled with tears. But the monitor beeped alarmingly again. The doctor shouted, "Twin 2! Complications!" The world held its breath. Peterson held Reno's hand as if it were the only anchor in existence, whispering, "We've made it this far. Nothing will take them from us now." Reno, exhausted, trembling, yet radiant with love and determination, nodded weakly, drawing strength from his presence and the tiny miracles in her womb. The seconds stretched unbearably, the room thick with tension, until finally a new set of cries erupted, twin voices announcing their arrival into a world of love, hope, and protection. Even as exhaustion washed over them, Peterson pressed his forehead against Reno's, tears streaming freely. "They're here. Our miracle," he whispered. Reno's hands rested on their tiny bodies, her heart swelling with joy, relief, and awe. But as they held their twins, the world outside the hospital loomed, a world filled with those who had wronged them, those who still underestimated the power of love, and shadows that had yet to be faced. Peterson's protective gaze swept the room, silent and fierce. No one will touch them. No one will ever hurt my family again. The fluorescent hospital lights cast a harsh glow across the sterile corridor, but Peterson barely noticed. His mind was consumed with one thought, one fear, one desperate prayer. He paced back and forth outside the emergency room, his hands clenching and unclenching, his heartbeat echoing like thunder in his chest. "Take everything I own," he whispered hoarsely, his voice breaking under the weight of desperation. "Take my money, my empire, everything. Just save her. Please, God, save her." The storm of fear and helplessness inside him mirrored the storms they had endured in the past, from Reno's humiliating exile to Jack's betrayal, yet nothing had ever felt as raw, as urgent as this moment. Each time the doors to the OR slid open, Peterson's breath caught, his eyes darting toward the glimpse of surgeons rushing past, the clatter of medical instruments ringing in his ears. Hours crawled by, each minute stretching into an eternity. Peterson's eyes never left the doors, every second a test of his resolve. Sweat soaked his brow, his hands shaking slightly, yet his determination did not waver. The thought of losing Reno, of never hearing her voice again, of never holding the tiny lives they had created, was unbearable. He sank onto the nearest chair, his head in his hands, the weight of fear pressing down like an unrelenting tide. A nurse appeared briefly in the hallway, and Peterson's head snapped up instantly. "Anything?" he asked, his voice cracking. The nurse shook her head with a gentle, sympathetic smile, but no words could soothe the storm raging inside him. Time moved as if in slow motion. Peterson's mind replayed the journey that had led them here, the rain-soaked night when he first found her, the years lost to separation, the love that had endured despite everything, and the miracle of the twins growing inside her. Each memory was a thread of hope woven tightly into his heart, and yet the fear of losing them frayed those threads with every passing. Then the sliding doors opened, and a surgeon stepped out, removing his mask with a tired but genuine smile. Peterson's pulse raced, hope and terror intermingling as the words he longed to hear finally came. "She's safe. And so are your twin sons." A rush of relief surged through him, nearly knocking him off his feet. Peterson ran to the room, his shoes echoing on the polished floors, tears welling in his eyes, blurring the sterile lights into a halo around him. He reached the bed, kneeling beside Reno, taking her fragile, trembling hand into his own. "Reno, my love, you're safe," he whispered, voice breaking with emotion. Reno's eyelids fluttered weakly, her lips parting in a faint, barely audible smile. "We made it," she murmured, the words fragile but powerful, cutting through the tension of the long hours. Peterson leaned down, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead, savoring the warmth and reality of her presence. "You're my miracle," he whispered, every syllable soaked with relief, awe, and unconditional love. The twins lay swaddled nearby, their tiny cries blending into the symphony of relief and joy that filled the room. Each cry resonated with life, love, and the unspoken promise that Peterson would protect them all with every ounce of his being. As Reno blinked, slowly regaining strength, she glimpsed the tiny faces of her children, their eyes opening just enough to meet hers. The sheer reality of motherhood, of survival, and of love so immense it defied words, left her breathless. The following weeks were a blur of gentle routines, late-night feedings, and whispered declarations of love. Reno returned home to the mansion, Peterson's arms never leaving her, the twins nestled against her chest, their tiny hands clutching hers with instinctive trust. Every corner of the estate seemed filled with the echoes of their laughter, the warmth of a family finally whole. Peterson watched her with pride and reverence, his gaze lingering on her brown, radiant skin, the softness of her smile, the resilience that had carried them through storms, heartbreak, and despair. Every evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Reno would sit by the balcony, twins in her lap, watching the city glow beneath them, feeling a quiet sense of triumph and peace. But an unspoken tension remained, the memory of past enemies lingering like shadows in the corners of her mind. Peterson never left her side, the anchor in her life, the shield against every possible threat. Together they navigated sleepless nights, joyful mornings, and the simple yet profound moments of domestic bliss. Reno's confidence returned, her sense of self restored and magnified by the love that surrounded her, the twins' tiny hands and feet serving as daily reminders that life could be both fragile and extraordinary. One afternoon, a news alert flashed on the television, showing Reno walking through the city with her children in arms. The headline read, "The Woman Who Rose from Dust to Diamond." Peterson watched her, chest swelling with pride and gratitude, knowing the world now understood what he had always known, that she was unstoppable, radiant, and deserving of everything. Jack, now a shadow of his former self, watched the footage from a distance. His tears fell freely, each drop a mixture of regret, envy, and the realization that karma had finally delivered justice. The man who had once discarded her now knew too late that Reno had claimed her place in the world and in the heart of the man who truly loved her. As the camera panned back to Reno and the twins, Peterson wrapped his arm around her waist, pulling her close, and whispered words only she could hear. "You were thrown away, but fate always keeps its treasures for those who never stop believing in love." The mansion, now brimming with life, laughter, and hope, became a sanctuary where past pains were replaced with healing, joy, and unshakable love. Reno walked through the halls with her children in arms, her steps confident, her brown skin radiant in the golden light of late afternoon. Peterson followed, his protective presence a constant reminder that together they had faced storms that would have broken lesser bonds and emerged stronger, united, and unstoppable. From the balcony of her office, Reno looked out over the city, her eyes reflecting the sunset, her heart full of gratitude and triumph. The twins giggled softly in her arms, Peterson's hand resting lightly over hers, and for the first time in years she felt a perfect, unshakable peace. The final moments of the day were quiet, yet charged with love. Reno turned to Peterson, their eyes locking in a silent understanding that this chapter of their lives, though fraught with pain, betrayal, and near loss, had been transformed into a testament of enduring love and faith. She leaned into him, his arm wrapping protectively around her shoulders, her cheek resting against his chest, feeling his heartbeat, steady and strong. The sun dipped fully below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of pink, purple, and gold, a reminder that life had its trials, but beauty always followed storms. Peterson whispered softly, "Our journey isn't over, Reno, but as long as we have each other, love never dies." The mansion hummed with life, the twins asleep in their cribs, Reno and Peterson finally able to breathe freely, savoring every second of triumph, love, and miracle. Every tear shed, every trial endured, had led to this, family, home, and a love so deep it could weather any storm. Reno smiled, her eyes reflecting the city lights, her heart beating in perfect harmony with Peterson's, knowing beyond doubt that destiny had delivered them not just happiness, but a legacy of love that would last forever. As Reno stood on the office balcony at sunset, Peterson wrapped his arms around her, the twins asleep safely in the nursery behind them. He whispered against her ear, "You were thrown away, but fate always keeps its treasures for those who never stop believing in love." She closed her eyes, breathing in the warmth of their shared triumph, knowing in that moment Every tear, every heartbreak, and every storm had been worth it. Love, indeed, never dies. Wow. What a journey! Reno's story proves that love, courage, and faith can turn even the darkest moments into miracles. If this story touched your heart, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to Beyond Color Stories so you never miss a tale that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Comment below. I want to know which part made you feel every emotion with Reno and Peterson. And remember, no matter how cruel life seems, love always finds a way. Stay with us, because the next story will be even more unforgettable.